Welcome to Tactical Mindscape. In this episode, I want to examine a tactical roguelike called Valor of Man, and specifically how it turns foresight itself into the primary skill the player is asked to master. This is not a review and it's not a playthrough. Instead, I'm going to break the game down into 3 layers. First, we'll look at the gameplay systems and practical turns, how turns work, how positioning works, and how actions and reactions interact on the grid. Second, we'll explore the philosophical design choices behind these systems, why the designer chose to emphasize prediction, uncertainty, and consequence rather than execution speed or luck. And finally, we'll talk about what's happening in the brain while you engage with these mechanics, using real cognitive and neurochemical concepts to explain why this game feels tense, satisfying, and mentally absorbing. As I play, I'll try to show specific examples, but the focus here is understanding why the design works, not just what happens on screen. So let's start with the core gameplay loop. I have a run going right now. I'm about to encounter a elite fight. Structurally, Valor of Man resembles a Slay the Spire style progression map where each run advances node by node. At the tactical level, however, the game departs sharply from card-driven roguelikes. You control a team of 4 characters, selected from a larger roster of distinct classes. Each unit occupies a single tile on a grid-based battlefield. On each turn, every character has 2 action points, and those points can be spent in any order on movement, attacks, or abilities that are unlocked through gear and progression. What immediately distinguishes Valor of Man is how information is presented. Enemies do not act randomly. Each monster clearly telegraphs 2 things. First, what it intends to do on its turn, and second, how it will react if certain conditions are triggered, most often if it's attacked. These reactions are not abstract. They are spatially defined. The game shows you exactly which tiles will be affected. For example, an undead dragon might signal that on its next turn it will retreat several tiles and release poison gas towards the nearest target. At the same time, it might carry a reaction token indicating that if it's struck, it will immediately lash out in a cone in front of itself. This means that every offensive action also creates a positional problem. You're not simply deciding whether to attack, but where your units will be standing after the reaction resolves. On top of that, abilities are governed by more than cooldowns. Certain actions have critical hit chances, introducing probabilistic upside, but they also accumulate strain. Strain represents increasing failure risk when an ability is overused. The more you rely on a powerful tool, the more likely it is to fail when you need it most. This immediately discourages rote play. You cannot simply discover an optimal pattern and repeat it. The system actively resists habit formation. Finally, there is the courage system. Each unit has a finite courage pool. If a character loses all of their courage points, they are removed from the fight and receive a permanent debuff that persists across encounters. This introduces long-term consequences. Losing a unit is not just a tactical setback for the current battle, but it degrades your run as a whole. The fail state reinforces this philosophy. If all units fall, or if all units lose their courage, the run ends. Taken together, these systems mean that Valor of Man is not asking you to solve a single encounter. It is asking you to manage risk, positioning, and probability across time. So here we will engage with this giant undead slayer. And we see here that this monster, when attacked, will charge 4 spaces and perform an AoE attack. And on its turn, it's going to walk 4 spaces to the nearest enemy and do an AoE swing. So right now we see the farthest player character from the monster is our rogue here. So we see that he plans to move 4 spaces and then swing like this. So we're going to use this distraction ability to make it so that our undead monster here won't react as readily. We'll use our cleric's turn undead ability, which we can't reach right now. We'll move our mage up here. We'll use her teleport ability. And we'll move out of the way here. And this was mostly just to demonstrate how spatial considerations are taken into account here. This is not what I would call optimal play in any way, shape, or form. Now, let's step back and talk about the philosophy embedded in these mechanics. At its core, Valor of Man is a game about foresight under uncertainty. Many tactical games reward optimization, identify the strongest build, execute it cleanly, and minimize variance. Valor of Man, however, does something more interesting. It exposes variance directly and asks the player to engage with it consciously. By showing enemy intentions and reactions, the game removes ambiguity about what might happen, but it preserves uncertainty about whether your plan will survive contact with reality. The strain system is particularly important here. Philosophically, it presents diminishing reliability. The more you depend on a solution, the less trustworthy it becomes. This mirrors real-world decision environments studied in behavioral economics and decision theory, where repeated reliance on a single strategy increases fragility. The courage mechanic reinforces this by attaching moral weight to loss. Characters are not disposable resources. Their failure has memory. The system remembers your mistakes. In philosophical terms, the game encourages what is known as counterfactual thinking, the constant evaluation of alternative futures. You're repeatedly asking yourself, if I ask here, what chain of reactions will unfold? Importantly, the game does not punish uncertainty, it structures it. You are never surprised by an enemy behavior. You are punished only for failing to account for it. This shifts responsibility entirely onto the player's reasoning process. The result is a design that rewards prudence, flexibility, and humility rather than dominance. You are not meant to feel powerful, you are meant to feel careful. So what's happening in the brain while you engage with these systems? From a cognitive perspective, Valor of Man heavily recruits the prefrontal cortex, particularly regions associated with executive function, planning, and working memory. When you examine enemy telegraphs and mentally simulate possible outcomes, you're engaging in prospective cognition, the brain's ability to model future states. This process relies on dopaminergic signaling not as a reward for success, but as a motivator for exploration and hypothesis testing. Dopamine here is not pleasure, it is anticipation. The strain mechanic interacts with this in a subtle way. In practical terms, this is why tense turns feel mentally taxing rather than chaotic. As ability failure risks increase, uncertainty rises. This elevates neurochemical activity, increasing arousal and attention focus. In practical terms, this is why tense turns feel mentally taxing rather than chaotic. The courage system, however, engages the limbic system, particularly the amygdala, by attaching emotional weight to loss. Because consequences persist across encounters, the brain treats failure as meaningful rather than disposable. This combination creates a loop where cognitive effort, emotional investment, and reward prediction are tightly coupled. When a plan succeeds, when you anticipate a reaction, reposition correctly, and avoid cascading failure, the brain delivers a dopamine signal tied to model accuracy. You are rewarded not for reflexes, but for being right about the future. Over time, this trains cognitive flexibility, the ability to abandon rigid plans, update mental models, and tolerate uncertainty without panic. This is a rare design goal, and it places Valor of Man closer to strategic training simulations rather than to conventional roguelikes. So, when you look at Valor of Man through this lens, it becomes clear that the game is less about winning individual fights and more about cultivating a particular mindset. It rewards foresight over force, restraint over repetition, and understanding over execution. That combination of transparent information, persistent consequence, and probabilistic risk creates a uniquely thoughtful tactical experience. If this kind of analysis is interesting to you, if you enjoy understanding not just how games work, but why they feel the way they do, this is exactly what Tactical Mindscape is about. Thanks for watching.